Stay focused.
Ghost. Oh, dodged.
Rex, move it out. Move it to
Spread.
Next one will be rain.
Green.
Okay.
For the yellow.
Going, just keep going, keep going, keep
Go.
going.
Boom! Yes!
Oh my god, yes! Screenshot Reddit.
Easy!
I don't believe that anyone, not even Salt themselves, expected to be amongst the first people ever to clear Salvation Pass. But, in the end, they ended up with the official world first kill. So, what happened? Welcome to MindSpike. First off, before I start digging into this subject, I'd like to point out that in no way, shape, or form am I intent on discrediting the success and effort that MightyTeapot and his guild Salt put into clearing the newest Raidwing Salvation Pass. The theoretical discussion that I'm intent on sharing in this video is solely meant to emphasize some core aspects of successful raiding in Guild Wars, which I believe the efforts of Salt have highlighted on a grand and very successful scale. Just keep this in mind when or if I say something that may sound somewhat dismissive or negligent in reference to what Salt achieved. I deeply respect what they accomplished, and I'll tell you exactly why that is. Now, about 2 weeks ago, the second Raidwing for Guild Wars 2 was released. Most people had some vague ideas as to who they believed would be amongst the first guild to complete it, but against all odds, Salt ended up taking home the official first clear. And they even managed to do it within an extremely short period of time. The reason why this achievement stands out so much is because Salt has never been perceived as or aimed for any elite status within the hardcore community. The origins of Salt stem back to about the release of the first Raidwing and was created by everyone's favorite memester, Mr. MightyTeapot. Without going into specifics, the guild was more or less created on the basis of just joining together with Teapot to do different activities on his stream, both in PvP and PvE, and so of course, because raiding was a thing, they also ended up in Spirit Vale. At the time, Spirit Vale was heavily perceived to be some of the most hardcore content in the game, yet week after week, they more or less casually practiced Wing 1, which over time fostered a mentality referred to as a Clown Fiesta, which completed their somewhat casual approach to the content. In short, it seemed like they were simply having fun. No rush, no discrimination. Every clown was welcome, regardless of this more laid-back attitude towards the hardcore content. Over time, they became more and more skilled in the encounters, resulting in a lot faster clears of the first wing, a lot more confidence in each other, as well as more insight into what each member of the Clown Fiesta might bring to the fight. Now, Spirit Vale is, for better or worse, mostly focused around simple DPS checks. There exists quite a few mechanics, yes, but for the most part, the fights simply revolve around the idea that you just have to keep your eyes on the boss and swing your sword. Once every member is aware of his or her individual yet partially overlapping roles in any of the fights, some players will be perfectly fine simply tunnel visioning their own gameplay. This is what makes Spirit Vale very manageable in terms of creating a solid learning curve for the raiding experience in general. Some might even go as far as to say that the Clown Fiesta group was born in Spirit Vale, molded by it. Their commonalities had been fostered and expanded upon for months before Wing 2's release date was even announced. And so eventually, in comes Salvation Pass. Contrary to Spirit Vale, the fights in Salvation Pass are very heavy on their mechanics compared to Spirit Vale's DPS checks. The enrage timers are much more lenient and offer up loads of time for players to deal with these mechanics. A common theme for the encounters in Salvation Pass is for every member of the squad to possibly be subjected to any mechanic almost at random. Some mechanics, of course, like the mushroom you have to eat a sloth, are very possible to organize prior to the actual fight, but stuff like the volatile poison and the fixate mechanic are mechanics that all members need to be aware of in case they are affected by it. Many squad roles for the mechanics aren't as predefined for the Salvation Pass encounters as they are for Spirit Vale. Thus, theoretically, the learning curve should be steeper for any group as a whole, even with the more forgiving enrage timer. So how come Salvation Pass was beaten in only 2 days by Salt compared to the week it took for much more elite guilds to complete Spirit Veil. Naysayers may put forth the argument that there was a whole lot of leaked information spinning around the community as a result of some apparently untrustworthy testers of the wing. But on the flip side of this argument, Teapot decided to live stream their entire progression for the world to see, showcasing that indeed they did not have any inside information to go by. Others might simply say that the second raid boss in Wing 2 doesn't really offer any great challenge, which I completely agree with, unfortunately. But still, if we simply look at the time investment for the different bosses throughout both wings, we find that there were an overwhelming number of progression guilds that spent upwards of 15 to 30 hours for the first kill of either Gorseval or Sabbatha. Yet, for Soul, they spent 6 hours on Sloth and 4 hours on the final boss of Wing 2, Matthias, which obviously is a grand total of much fewer hours spent on the entirety of Wing 2 than some guilds spent on a single boss in Wing 1. And so I ask once again, what made Salt so special? To try and answer that, I'd like to introduce a term coined back in 1990 by Edwin Hodgins, who found that cognition didn't solely reside in the mind of an individual. It can be distributed and shared among team members in authentic situations. He called this distributed cognition. Hodgins put forth the idea that in many human systems, the distribution of task knowledge is a result of movement in the system with increasing expertise. In short, distributed cognition is the idea that within a given group with a common goal, each utterance, movement, and general interaction between team members can and will over time result in extension of the singular mind to encompass the entire team, to form a shared cognition of the task at hand, such as a raid boss. Now, as a side note, because I know that there's at least going to be one comment from you guys correcting me if I don't clarify this, the theory of distributed cognition doesn't exclusively extend to people. According to Hodgins, cognition can also exist as a relation between the actual environment and the actor. But for this video, I'll solely focus on the actors. Herein lies the ability to coordinate activities, and the process of interpretation and perception it requires relies upon a social organization built of a body of skills and practices which allows different actors, or players in this case, to recognize what each other is doing and thereby generate appropriate behavior. And so in relation to this theory, Hodgins described three partially interlocking models: the team situation model, the team mental model, and the idea of workspace awareness. The team situation model is, simply put, the team's collective dynamic understanding of a specific situation, as in knowing what happens when and where. The team mental model is described as long-lasting and exists prior to the task. It's acquired through training and experience and has a variety of forms. Thus, it can be declarative, procedural, and strategic. It has a variety of content in terms of knowledge of team members' roles and responsibility, and knowledge of team members' skills, knowledge, beliefs, abilities, etc., as well as task-specific knowledge such as understanding of task procedures and typical task strategies. In essence, this model represents the entire endeavor that is teamwork, as a ballet of intertwining actions and reactions between every member of the team or squad. The team mental model provides a collective for team members to draw upon when task situations develop, which is especially an important feature to have when theory crafting how to overcome a specific raid encounter, as a task like that requires general overview, not only of the encounter itself, but also of what each profession or member of the squad might be able to bring to any given fight. Therefore, any group of people heavily involved with one another in a cooperative fashion will, or at least should, have a broader understanding of their collective strength, even when they're faced with a completely new task. As for Salt specifically, the 14 people involved in the entire Clear of Salvation Pass had numerous prior occasions in Wing 1 to get to know each other's skill sets better and better, thus creating a shared team mental model. Lastly, on my previous list, there's workspace awareness, which basically is both a product and a process. The product is the state of understanding about another player's interaction with the workspace, which allows people to interpret events. The process is the repetitive cycle of extracting information from the environment, integrating this information with existing knowledge, and using that knowledge to direct further perception. It can be argued that the maintenance of this workspace awareness involves several cognitive activities, including pre-attentive processing, attention allocation, perception, working memory management, comprehension, and projection, all of which to me seem like essential cognitive features for progression raid groups to possess collectively. When learning any task within the raid, no single member will be able to observe everything happening from the very get-go or even after much practice. Therefore, in between boss attempts, both the team mental model and the team's workspace awareness will be constantly revised. Hodgins specifically defines awareness as knowledge that must be maintained and kept up to date. Environments may change at different rates, but in all cases, a person must continually gather new information and update what they already know. For the Salt Squad, as I said, they had 14 different minds contributing to the entire win clear, as well as the fact that they theoretically also had the extended mind of the Twitch chat as the entire thing was being broadcast, all of which theoretically could contribute to a shared awareness of the workspace, the raid bosses per se. Now, one of the biggest fallacies in understanding cognitive distribution as a team tool is the assumption that every squad member should have all information. A notion like that is bound to fail regardless of anything. A system where everybody knows everything will be very inefficient to produce, as those same resources would be better spent on individual expertise partnered with peripheral knowledge from the rest of the squad. Which is why you logically wouldn't usually swap out the people going for cannons on Sabbatha each run, or those managing the mushrooms of sloth. A person may familiarize himself or herself with a specific task, whereas the rest of the squad simply acknowledge the task is being handled and act accordingly. If you've ever been a part of or watched any raid groups on YouTube or Twitch, you'll know that one of the biggest key features that groups have is their collective awareness of mechanics. Very rarely do you hear a single member calling out every single mechanic. Sure, you may allocate a natural leader to the raid who calls out certain mechanics, but usually what happens is a natural divide in utterances between the individual expertise fields of the given members. These utterances will then act as an extension of every squad member's mind. The most typical examples of this would be something like the cannon rotation on Sabbatha, the green fields on Veil Guardian, the fountain location on Matthias, and so on. Though obviously this extends much further, especially for progression raids, wherein every difficult attack may as well be called out, such as Sloth's Shake and Matthias' shotgun attack, which both have the potential to cause devastating damage to the group in the blink of an eye, but are both easily avoidable once the squad has grown familiarized with them. Explicit communication both before entering a fight and during is, in my opinion, one of the main keys to success in a raiding scenario like the one we have in Guild Wars, but everything in moderation. There is definitely such a thing as too much communication.
Shut up.
But that all comes down to the collective workspace and situation awareness of the raid squad. Another fallacy of distributed cognition is the assumption that a single member should be allowed to do his own thing. An exhaustive and mutually exclusive knowledge distribution pattern is very vulnerable to system breakdown. If that one team member fails to perform, the whole system will fail and the group will simply decide to restart the encounter. This last fallacy is one that I know for a fact many of the more hardcore guilds within our community perished to during the first Wing Spirit Veil. The playstyles and team mentality of many of these players were born and bred within the speedrunning dungeon community, wherein many of these players saw themselves as a one-man army, with a success rate not necessarily dependent on team play as much as their own superiority. From personal observations amongst members of this part of the community, the early dungeon community seemed to have cultivated an attitude for many players wherein remarks from other players that may be intended as constructive criticism proposed for the betterment of the group would be perceived as personal attacks, thus damaging that one player's superiority. Or to paraphrase, some of the hardcore players in our community have a hard time managing constructive criticism, which can only result in bad team relations and constrained communication. The very moment you enter into any true team task, such as a raid. Put enough of these personalities in one group and you've got a ticking time bomb. When someone works alone in a workspace, their activities and their situation awareness involve only the workspace and the domain task. In a collaborative situation, however, people must undertake another task, that of collaboration, and therefore their situation awareness must involve both the domain and the collaborative. This is the sole reason why many good dungeon players aren't guaranteed to be good raid players as well, especially when it comes to any new task presented to them. Dungeons in Guild Wars 2 became a repetitive act of applied skills, an endeavor to which anyone willing could simply look up a quick guide of how to overcome any mechanic with the right damage rotation. Raids, on the other hand, are currently in a continuously evolving learning curve based around team play. Especially progression raids revolve solely around the idea that the progression teams are the first to ever encounter these new bosses, and so there exists no easy guides or universal workarounds. Everything has to be learned. Thus, you might find yourself in a situation where your learned and previously applied skills shouldn't be your penultimate focus, but rather you should focus on the acquisition of new knowledge in the heat of the moment and the act of collaboration. The biggest strength of the raiding experience in Guild Wars as opposed to the dungeon experience is the fact that any and all players attempting to raid will have no universally applied solution to simply slap onto their playstyles in order to conquer any of the bosses. And so why did Salt succeed against all odds exactly? Not because they were elite players necessarily, but because they were comfortable enough with each other's company to communicate with each other, both on the field and off the field, to collectively evolve and extend their shared cognition to create truly innovative solutions, or as Mr. Teapot so elaborately paraphrased to me when I told him about this video, we move as one circus, but are separate clowns. In my opinion, continuous raid success requires not only self-reflectiveness, as I've talked about some time ago, it also requires distributed cognition within team play, a tool which can only be truly utilized with continued practice. And so here's my advice, based on what Salt single-handedly proved to the entire community. Find some friends you like to play with, and regardless of anything, I believe that your raiding experience will become much more positive in the long run. Don't be afraid to enjoy yourself during raid sessions. In the end, the bond and inside you and your group can form from an attitude like this might even make all of you a collective entity to be reckoned with, just like Salt. And that is what I've chosen to name the Clown Fiesta Effect. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As I said at the very beginning of this video, the entirety of this video is intended as a theoretical discussion, regardless of whether I believe what I've said to be at least partially true. I'm still not claiming the theory of distributed cognition to necessarily be the single truth as to why Salt succeeded. Maybe they were just badasses in disguise, who knows, right? But regardless, that's all I've got for you guys this time. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, I will see you in the mists.